Justin Herbert is still injured, and unfortunately, the quarterbacks on Saturday didn't give us much to feel good about, so it's now time for the Chargers to add a veteran backup into the mix.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 9 seasons, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there, as always, for making us your first listen, and to make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, I think if the season were to start right now, you would not feel great about who the Chargers have in that quarterback room. And I think that means that the Chargers have to go out there and sign a veteran backup quarterback, someone that you feel like can step in and try to win a football game for you if Justin Herbert is not available. We're also going to talk about Quentin Johnston and if he is safe on this 53-man roster, and can this defense go from a bottom 10 unit to a top 10 unit? That is going to be interesting.
I mean, I was impressed by Saturday's performance defensively. A top 10 unit would be a hell of a turnaround. But today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. David, it is Tuesday, and we are getting into our buy or sell, getting into the biggest Chargers storylines and overreactions. And after a performance from the Chargers we saw on Saturday, there's going to be a lot of overreactions flying around, totally understandably so. And some of them I don't think are overreactions. And I think the biggest thing on everyone's mind still at this point is just, is it Easton Stick? Should there be more there as far as competition? So the first buy or sell is as simple as this, David. Buy or sell, the Chargers need to add a veteran quarterback into that room.
Yeah, this is the easy buy for me. I feel like, the Chargers needed to upgrade the backup quarterback position after the end of last season, after you kind of saw what Easton Stick was bringing to the table. And yeah, he didn't have a lot of preparation time, but he's been with this organization for 5 years. And, he's coming into a preseason game. He should have full command on what they are doing and have the established chemistry. That did not manifest itself whatsoever. And so if it's Easton Stick stepping in to play meaningful snaps and going out there and playing games when it really matters, like, that's a huge problem for this football team. I feel like it has to come to a point where the team evaluates what Easton Stick brings to the table and what he does not, and goes out and gets a veteran quarterback they feel that can come in, step in, and try to keep this team competitive in the event that Justin Herbert is unavailable to start the season.
Yeah, and Easton Stick, for those who didn't get to see it, 5 of 13, 31 yards and an interception, 14.7 passer rating, 2.4 average yards per attempt. It was really bad. It was a really poor performance. Yeah. And then today at practice, reportedly, he goes out and on 7-7 completes all 9 of the passes that he throws. So obviously he's looking good at practice today. But there was some really bad stretches at training camp before that too. I think that for this team, it's hard because you don't know if Justin Herbert's going to miss time. I'm going to buy that I need to add a veteran backup just because the problem is even if Justin Herbert isn't going to miss time, now this is a situation where Justin Herbert has, sustained some sort of injury for 3 years in a row. I'm not going to call him injury prone because he's missed games 1 time in his career. In 4 seasons, he's missed 4 games. At the same time, things keep happening, right? So you need to have a better backup plan, or it could look like what happened when Justin Herbert was hurt last year and Easton Stick had to take over. And he went 0-4, and, wins are not a quarterback stat. There was no Corey Linsley or Keenan Allen or Mike Williams, right? He was dealing with the same kind of banged up roster that Justin Herbert was. But enough is enough at a certain point. And I just don't think that you can feel confident about winning games with Easton Stick as your quarterback or playing well enough to go win games. I just don't think this is a good enough roster, as we've talked about before. Like, this is a kind of transitional year as the Chargers try to build this roster into what they want it to finally be eventually. They can't afford to punt on 2 winnable games at the beginning of their season. They just can't. So I'd like to see a backup into the room, and I think the question becomes, Well, who are you going to pick up? Because it's a pretty dried out backup quarterback market because the Chargers had their chance with more options and they decided to re-sign Easton Stick. There's not much left, but there are a couple names, David, I think that you would feel at least a little bit better about them than you would about Easton Stick, including one we have here from EV.
What's up, fellas? This is Big EV. And what I want to say is buy or sell. AJ McCarron or Ryan Tannehill is a much better option for game one instead of Easton Stick if, in fact, the Chargers have to play without Justin Herbert.
Yeah, it's a great buy or sell. I mean, I'm going to punt on the A.J. McCarron one just because obviously I haven't really seen A.J. McCarron play because he hasn't thrown a touchdown pass since 2015. I remember last time I saw of him, he was declining an NFL job to, I think, take a UFL job at a certain point or left the bank or left whatever team he was on to go be a UFL quarterback the last time I heard about him. But Ryan Tannehill is a name that keeps popping up, right? So, David, let's stick to the Ryan Tannehill part of this. Are you buying or selling he would be a better option if one of these guys has to start week one in place of Justin Herbert than Easton Stick is?
Yeah, definitely buying it. I mean, that's an easy one for me. I mean, we're talking about a quarterback that has started for two different franchises with the Miami Dolphins and the Tennessee Titans.
So you're saying the Chargers should have already made this call then, basically,
yes,
right?
Definitely.
I mean, yeah.
100% they should have already made this call. 11 seasons in the league. As little as 3 years ago, he led the Titans to a 12-5 record. I mean, we're talking, 3,700 passing yards, 21 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. And I think the big question is he's just, he's finishing up a 4-year, $118 million contract. Obviously, he's not going to get anywhere close to that type of money right now. He's 36 years old, but to look at what he brings to the table and compare it to Easton Stick, it's pretty obvious to see who would be the better option. And it's clearly Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, and he was 3-5 last year, right? Not a quarterback stat like we've talked about, but like you still have, even though wins aren't a quarterback stat, there's just certain quarterbacks you're not going to win with, right? It's not mutually exclusive in that way. And Ryan Tannehill, even in a bad season for him last year, they were still able to win games, including a game against the Chargers, right? So he is a usable quarterback. He's 36 years old at this point. He's well past his prime, or at least hasn't been playing like it's his prime. But yeah, you take over the last 3 seasons, they were 21-16, but it's not like that's a roster that was just so loaded that they were always winning in spite of him. I think they did win in spite of him at times. At the same time, we're talking about him versus Easton Stick. We're talking about him compared to a very dried out backup quarterback, market that's out there right now. So I think the big thing is does he want to come, right? Because he's coming into it. No, like he's basically said publicly that it has to be the right opportunity for him. With the Chargers, you're looking at a short-term stint, right? For the most part. You're assuming that Justin Herbert, and you might not even play, right? At this point, you might not even play. So I don't know if Ryan Tannehill, they could have called him already. We don't know that. It's hard to say because if he's at a point right now where he could do this or wait for a quarterback to sustain a serious injury and tag along with a potentially contending team. Yeah. That's two totally different things, right? If we knew Justin Herbert was hurt for 2 months, that's a very different thing. I don't know if Ryan Tannehill wants to come right now, So that's the other part of this. This is a big buy or sell we got from a lot of people. So let's get to this one quickly, David. Prediction time. Buy or sell, Easton Stick will still be the primary backup for this team by week 1. This is from Shaggy on Twitter.
Yeah, so this is a great buy or sell from Shaggy, and I think this one leans into more of the overreaction aspect of things. And I'm going to say this by saying Justin Herbert absolutely loves Easton Stick, and he feels like Easton Stick is very instrumental on helping him kind of devise game plans and prepare him for the games. But at the on the other side of the token, Easton Stick has to be trusted to step in and play if Justin Herbert is unavailable. And they've already elevated Luis Perez and put him in a situation to where he could potentially be that backup quarterback. I mean, that's a lot to ask. But with that being said, I am going to sit here and tell you that I do believe Easton Stick is going to be the backup quarterback week 1.
I do too. It's a tough one, right? Because it's not like he's done anything in a game scenario that would say he should be. At the same time, I'm not convinced the Chargers think Justin Herbert's going to miss time. I think there's a small chance that Luis Perez could overtake him if that's what the QB room ends up looking like. And me and you've talked about it. Hey, give Luis Perez a lot more snaps, right? Give them
more.
equal opportunity, him and Easton Stick, maybe even give him time with the better players and see what he can do with those guys. So seemed like at practice today, Luis Perez was QB2 for the most part behind Easton Stick. I think if I had to guess right now, I would buy that Easton Stick is still the primary backup when the season starts, but I'd also buy that it's Justin Herbert rolling out there week 1 to start against the Raiders. But we still have much more to get into, including, is Quentin Johnston actually safe on this roster? Is it crazy to think that he could get cut? We're going to talk about that and much more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I need to tell you guys about eBay Motors because passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. That means there's literally no downside to this because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP this season and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. David, let's get into some more potential overreactions and storylines for the Chargers, starting with Quentin Johnston, because obviously we knew we wanted to see a huge leap from Quentin Johnston, and his first preseason game, there'd be no way to kind of feel good about it, and understanding what was available to him or kind of the situation that he's in. So this buy or sell today is from Joe Talk SD, who says Quentin Johnston will not make the 53-man roster. David, are you ready to make that leap? Are you buying or selling that?
The reason why I wanted to use this buy or sell is because I see a lot
Joe
of
Talk
people.
SD is you?
Oh,
I didn't even.
Oh yeah, that's right. That is me. I've been seeing a lot of people online saying Brennan Rice is going to overtake Quentin Johnston. He's going to take his roster spot. No, he's not. I'm sorry. Okay, you guys need to put that out of your mind. Like, Quentin Johnston is not going anywhere. He is not in jeopardy of not making this 53-man roster. They have already said, and people around the organization and team has said, that they have big plans for Quentin Johnston this season. He is going to be a part of the game plan. He's going to be a part of the offense. He's not going anywhere. So I don't understand where this narrative is coming from. I get that you're excited about Brennan Rice and the routes that he runs. He brings a very nice skill set to the table. But this is not an either-or situation for me. Okay, I think both of these guys are going to make this 53-man roster. I have said all along, I expect the Chargers keep 6 wide receivers. And as it stands right now, I believe both of those gentlemen are going to be among those 6.
Yeah, I mean, and someone like a Cornelius Johnson is kind of falling out of the running, it feels like, as that 6th guy, if they keep 6. Then a Jalen Johnson, right, comes out of nowhere and makes you at least think about it. Right, because he's been pretty impressive and has continued to show up at training camp, and then the preseason game makes the biggest play of the game. Yeah, I think that Quentin Johnston is safe because of the reported, interest they have in packages built around him and the ways they plan to use him, the way that Jim Harbaugh praised what his game is and just the physical attributes that he brings to the table, also knowing what he can do when used, right, because he was a nightmare for Jim Harbaugh when Jim Harbaugh played against him in the college football playoff and he had the super long touchdown. So they know what his ability is. I'm not going to overreact too much from the first preseason game because it's not like he went out there and had 3 drops, right? That'd be a different story. He went out there and got 0 catches and he wasn't targeted at all. The problem is for the wide receivers in general, I mean, you're talking about less than 10 catches made by the wide receivers for the entire game. So it's impossible to gauge the wide receivers fully off that. From watching the routes and stuff that he was running, I thought he looked fine. I thought he looked good, but still, though, I mean, the fact that we're having this conversation obviously shows you kind of what the trajectory has been for his career so far. And just, you can't really feel good about it. I think that he is 100% safe to make this roster. I'd be shocked if he was cut after one season, even as a first-round pick that was taken by another regime. It would shock me. I think that is an overreaction at this point. But what about this one? This one is from Dan Talk Sports. Buy or sell? Saturday proves we should be more concerned about Greg Roman's offense. Obviously, this is an offense that put together a miserable performance in their first preseason game. Pretty much total futility for most of the game, and it never really changed much. David, did that make you more concerned at all about Greg Roman's offense, just seeing how much they were stymied in that first game?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And the reason why is because Greg Roman's not scheming to win this football game. Like, he's not exotically putting a game plan together and trying to exploit weaknesses. Like, that's not what was happening in this game. The play calling was very vanilla. There's absolutely no reason to show your cards on what you are trying to do offensively when the games do not count. There's absolutely no reason to do that. So until we actually see Greg Roman's offense in the regular season, when he is putting time, energy, and effort into building a game plan to systematically dissect an opposing defense, that's when you can start getting concerned if the results are not there. Also, you have to mention the players that were not there on offense, like the Ladd McConkey and the Gus Edwards and the J.K. Dobbins. And, oh, by the way, Justin Herbert. So, no, I am not concerned with this whatsoever. Definitely way too early to be drawing any of those type of conclusions.
I'm selling it because I don't think it's because of Saturday why I would be concerned, right? Like, I've always been somewhat concerned about Greg Roman's offense. Go look at the show when they first signed him, right? I was not high on it. It's not the pick that I wanted. I understood it. I understood that Jim Harbaugh would want him. They've had success in the past.
Yeah.
But I was already somewhat concerned about it. I'm not going to take this and overreact to it and say this is the reason you should be concerned about Greg Roman for a lot of the, parts that you brought up there. At the same time, I think this is the fair question about this offense, which is, what if the offensive line isn't as improved as you want it to be? Right? What does the offense look like then? Because I haven't seen a Greg Roman offense that wasn't offensive line based. That wasn't based on having an offensive line that's playing well for them. What is this offense going to look like if the running game isn't that good? Right? Like, these are the things that concern me the most, because I think we're banking on Greg Roman really improving this offensive line from guys that we've seen struggle during the courses of their career. I think we're assuming the running game is going to get a lot better without having actually seen it yet. And the flip side of that, the Chargers balled out and ran the ball down everyone's throat in the preseason last year. And how did that, work out for them? They were one of the worst rushing teams in the entire NFL last year. So you can't ever, I'm not going to overreact and be concerned because of this performance. If it was Justin Herbert out there and they were completely shut out like that, maybe it would give me an inkling.
Yeah.
I was already somewhat concerned. This doesn't really move the needle for me in either direction. It definitely doesn't make me feel better about it, right? But it doesn't make me more concerned than I would have already been. So let's get to this last buy or sell here, which is this, and I think it's a good one, probably because I wrote it. Is it going to take some time, buy or sell? It is going to take some time before this team really starts to look like a Jim Harbaugh type of football team, buy or sell?
Yeah, I think for this one, like this is a situation where Rome was not built in a day. And so I am going to buy that it's going to take some time for this football team to be made completely in Jim Harbaugh's image, right? With that physicality and that mindset and of course in practice as well, seeing it out there on the football field. That's going to take some time for that to manifest itself and show itself. I think it's going to take, several games before they're able to kind of form that identity. They started it when he first got here with the things that he was saying and the players that he was bringing in. But at the end of the day, that has to come from how they perform on the football field when it really matters. And so Jim Harbaugh is a winner. He's won quickly at a lot of different places. So I'm not saying it's going to take the entire season, but I do feel like it's going to take several games before that identity starts to show itself.
Yeah, I'm buying it too. I think the problem is it's impossible to kind of say when it's all going to click, and like you could see them look like a Jim Harbaugh type of team for a couple of games and they could have a game where they don't look like that. I think the reason I thought about this specifically is because the offense in the first half got bullied. They weren't the bully, they got bullied, right? Yeah. And that's another team who has a first-year head coach in Mike McDonald, who's coming from the Ravens, who want to do a lot of the same things under John Harbaugh. He's bringing that Ravens culture. And it looked like it set in for them, at least somewhat, right? In a preseason game, obviously, setting. It will take some time. We said it before. You can't flip a switch, right? You still have to play with most of the players that were already here. They didn't have the cap space to completely try to rebuild it the way they would have in free agency if that was the plan. A lot of things have to happen. I think you are seeing it. I think you're already seeing some of it. It's just kind of incremental. Like, I think the fact that you only see 3 penalties committed on Saturday night, right? That's a discipline thing. That's at putting every weight back the right way, facing the right way in the right spot every single time. It's having your shirt tucked in every day, whatever the case is. All those little things I think showed themselves in small ways, but I don't know when we're going to get the full picture of it. So I'm buying that it is going to take some time, but we still have more to get into, getting into our biggest Charger storylines and overreactions, including if we're that sold on Jesse Minter after that pretty, impressive performance, that he can really turn this defense around and turn it into a top 10 unit, and much more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys about LinkedIn Jobs, because when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, because LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. The other part of it is, if you're not using LinkedIn, you're just not always seeing the best candidates, because LinkedIn isn't just a job board. It helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. The only place they're going is LinkedIn. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. Let them help you, because LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. It's why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. David, we have more great buy or sells to get into, and I just want to thank the everydayers for always coming through for us. When we want to get you guys involved with the show, you guys are always there to jump in and have your voices heard, and that always makes our show better. It's one of the key foundational parts of this show. And we have another good buy or sell about Jesse Minter's defense, and maybe the hype train going a little too far. We'll get into it, but I do want to make sure to tell everyone to, thank you so much for making us your first listen. If you need a second listen, make sure to check out the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast, because it's that time of the year and you want to make sure that you absolutely crush your draft so you have all of the bragging rights against your friends. If you guys want the best insight, make sure to check out Locked On Fantasy Football podcast on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast from. But David, we have this from one of our best question askers. We have Chris Saiz coming into the show today, and he wants to know this. The Chargers, buy or sell the Chargers going from bottom 10 to top 10 in defense this season after Saturday's performance is an actual possibility?
Man, that's a really, really good question, because I am highly encouraged by what I saw from the Chargers defense the first time we got an opportunity to see what it looked like with who was out there, right? Because that's an important thing to mention, is a lot, and I think more so on the defensive side, you had a lot of your key pillars that were not playing in that football game. We're talking about the Joey Bosa's, the
your
Khalil
three
Macks,
best players,
the Derwin James, right? Yeah, your superstar players were not on the football field, and yet that defense looked different. And I that's one of the things I posted during the football game when I put out a post. It's like, this defense looks different, and it's better different. Now, we're talking about, going from bottom 10 to top 10. I'm not ready to sit here and commit to that right now. I appreciate the fact that I feel like Jesse Minter is going to be able to scheme up things exceptionally well. I feel like he's going to be able to adjust very well in game. I'm confident in that, but I still need to see it. I still got to see it because there's just so much new with this scheme and how they want to go out there and do things and execute. Top 10 would be absolutely incredible. I think even if we're league average, like top 15, top 16, 17, I would be extremely satisfied with that. And I think that would make a world of difference.
I agree. I mean, I'm going to sell top 10 until I can see it, right? Like, I have to see it. That's a really bold prediction to think that they're going to do it, right? And maybe it's, some battle scars from the Brandon Staley defensive mastermind era. I think the biggest difference is just the fact that Jesse Minter is focused about this defense and installing this defense and communicating this defense at all times every day. He's not worried about calling timeouts or keeping the team together or making sure the locker room is good.
Right. Yeah.
Totally. Those kind of decisions Jesse Minter's not involved with. So I like Jesse Minter a lot. I'm not fully ready. I mean, they were 24th in points per game last year, 28th in yards per game allowed. So bottom 5 in yards per game allowed. Bottom, third in points per game allowed. And you didn't really lose much on that side of the ball, right? You kind of just added to it. You lost Kenneth Murray, which is maybe, addition by subtraction to a certain extent. No offense. You lost Eric Kendricks, who's a little over the hill more than likely, right?
Yeah.
I think the thing is, too, is you still have serious depth questions about the defensive line, the cornerbacks, and the safeties. Those are the things that you're not going to know that you need them until you need them. So we're not going to really see how well those guys play until then. But I'm really optimistic, and I'll tell you exactly why. The thing that was most encouraging to me in this game up until probably like the fourth quarter was just how connected the Chargers defense was. Like the fact that like the backups and the reserves and guys fighting for, just part-time roles on this team, they all knew what they were doing. Like they all understood the assignment, which is so huge when you're coming from a Brandon Staley defense where just guys look so lost so many times, right? So the fact that
and they gave out explosive plays left and right, and you just
because
didn't
of
really
that,
see that,
right? That's a direct result of it because not
Yeah.
everyone's on the same page, and when you're trying to go for perfection and one thing goes wrong, it can lead to a huge play going the other way.
Yeah.
That's what was so encouraging to me. Everyone seemed in sync. Like they gave up a couple big third and longs at the very end of the game when you're really getting to kind of the bottom of the barrel of what they have defensively.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I mean, Christian Fulton, Asante Samuel Jr., Alohi Gilman played one series, right? So like the rest of the time you had backups and backups in there and they all still stayed in sync. There was no huge explosive plays allowed. That was really encouraging to me. But
yes,
let's get this buy or sell here from Edward Matias, who says, Traymon Morris Brash will replace Chris Rumpf on the roster. So I know you had a similar one that we were going to use for this, which is just like, is Chris Rumpf still going to make this team because he got injured, right? The last thing we heard is Chris Rumpf is going to miss some time, which is all we're going to get from this regime. And that's been a problem, right? Like if you can't stay on the field, you can't help the team. And now his roster spot is very much in jeopardy. Are you buying or selling that Traymon Morris Brash could be potentially the guy that swoops in and takes that spot?
When you put the tape on it and you watch, like you can see Traymon Morris Brash impacting the game. Like, and he's a little bit of a thicker guy. I feel like he's going to be able to stand up and on the edge a little bit more with the physicality of what this defense is going to bring. He was able to cause pressure as well. The thing that kind of gives me a little pause is I don't know if he's going to replace Chris Rumpf on the special teams aspect of it, because Chris Rumpf was a big special teams contributor, was kind of a core four guy, and that's kind of how he has made his money in the NFL because he's been kind of going through a maturation process in his body and trying to grow into an NFL football player, an NFL edge player altogether. So I think that's the only thing that gives me pause, and also, who knows if there even is going to be a fifth edge rusher spot for Morris Brash to be able to occupy.
And the thing is we didn't think there would be until Jesse Minter spoke so highly about Chris Rumpf. And when you hear those words and also pair it with the fact that that he's one of Ryan Ficken's guys that is on that special teams unit, that's like, okay, well, those two combinations almost made him, a foregone conclusion to be cut to a roster lock overnight. Just hearing kind of how they thought about him. So I'm going to sell it because I do think there's just too many variables here that could happen. The other part of it is, the important part of it, is they signed Shaquille Quarterman today, who's an edge guy, an outside linebacker, who has never really done anything defensively. I think he played 8 snaps defensively last year. It was a very low number when I looked it up on Pro Football Focus. But what I did see was that he had 926 career special team snaps. They're bringing in a special teams guy to probably replace another special teams guy, which makes it more, much tougher for Morris Brash to make the roster. So I'm selling it because of that. But I like him, and I think he'll absolutely make the practice squad. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion he doesn't make it. I'm just not ready to buy that he's making it for sure yet. So we do have an Athir voicemail, and when Athir calls in, we got to get to him. So let's get to this one quickly before we get out of here.
Dan, David, this is your number one fan Athir. Buy or sell Tuesday. The NFL record is 14 sacks in one game. The Chargers will get 10 sacks in week 1 against the Raiders. I'm buying it. What do you say? Let's go.
Athir, we love you. So that's 10 sacks in one game, week 1 against the Raiders. David, quickly, are you buying or selling that?
The last time that the Chargers got over 10 sacks in a football game was against the Jets in 2012, where they were able to amass 11 sacks. This Chargers pass rush is insane. Like, they have probably the deepest edge room in the entire NFL. They got guys that can get after the quarterback. Are they going to get 10? I can't.
That's a bold prediction.
Yeah, that's a huge number. I'm going to sell it.
Yeah, if it was 7 or 8 a year, I might just FTR my way right onto your bandwagon with you. But 10 is a lot. 10 is a lot. Maybe we'll revisit it when we get closer to the season and see if I'm, feeling more, crazy about it. But like Khalil Mack had 6 sacks by himself in a game against, a rookie quarterback in Aiden O'Connell, and they didn't get 10 sacks in that game, right? So like, if they didn't get 10 sacks in a game that Khalil Mack is putting in a big number like that, it's a very, very hard number to get to. So I think that, I'm not willing to buy that. If it was 7 or 8, I get it. But if the year I love you, never change. You're always going for the boldest of the bold. And we know you have some more bold predictions that we'll get on here pretty soon. Especially when we get closer to the season. We'll probably just do a show where we do all bold predictions, right? And have you guys just call in with the craziest stuff that you have. So definitely planning on doing that. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. We are getting some reports from practice. We got a little away from training camp tomorrow. We're planning on diving back into what's going on this week at training camp, with the Chargers having a pretty pivotal second preseason game coming up on Saturday. But until then, to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as well as following us on all of our social media. It's a safe way to make sure you don't miss the show. Me and David both post it on our Twitters every day. You can find me at Dan Talk Sports and David Drogemeyer at DroTalkSD, as well as the show's page at Locked On LAC. You can also find us on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. So much more to get to. We have so much good stuff on the horizon. Thank you guys for making us your first listen. It is always your team every day, and we can't wait for the season coming up, even after a bad preseason game. Yes, we're still very excited, but make sure you guys are here tomorrow as we recap what's going on at training camp this week. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.